And these are our cases, right? Like I hope it was helpful, like to go again very quickly before the section 3, which I will try to close a bit quicker. Like is effectively, like it's we discussed the level of how big strategic programs like DIY are accepted, how these programs are built in general, like what problems are inherited to this model, what exact cases they can come down to, and we looked at all those cases from the point of view of how people come up with these ideas, what issue they're addressing, what marketing they build around them, how they put them in work, and how they are subjected by the issues. That is subject to too much corruption, nepotism, and lack of transparency. It's a very obvious one. It goes for lots of bureaucracy. It's the problem of all the complex models in the world. It's a battle that so many people went to, a battle that almost no one won. But I still think, and I kind of believe in humanity. I'm like, I still think, like that we can think about some ways, like we deal with this in general, and how we can make things better. Like making this model more transparent is not that hard. Like making sure that there are moments of alignment in between all parts of the model, all those cases and programs are accepted, discussed with the wider audience, checked and explained to people why these things are happening, what are the goals, what is someone looking to achieve, and how it will be controlled, maybe like with the wider participation of all of the groups involved into that, including like general audiences and businesses, because no one listens to them in a lot of cases. Like that would be much more beneficial. Also need to have the better funds control, like in general, because like level of corruption that goes that goes very weirdly, like there's like evil corruption, like where people are just like bad actors and they're like looking to make money on someone else's misery, or like corrupting the model and making money out of it, like full absence of principle, ethics, and moral, bullshit, embezzlement, right? Like illegal things. Like, but there is always, like this soft level of corruption that is often bugging models like that. Where someone's provided an opportunity, like support our global program, switch your PR agency for us to become your major client, do that for us. And very quickly, these companies got engulfed into very specific narrative that identify them at the market in a very narrow definition. And they become the hostage of the situation. It's like it's either you aggressively support this program, or your only client goes away, or all your clients are the same thinking, right? So it's like the program is your contract. Like it's, if you support this ideology, then you have job. If you don't support this ideology, you don't have job. And it really becomes an issue because like you kind of like, yeah, you don't like these people. Yes, they tell shit. Yes, they went out of depths of reason. But at the same time, you do understand, like that they don't have other options. Like the option would be to come clean and say that, look, we need to report the company, like we cannot associate ourselves now with that anymore. Because like it started as one thing and like continued as completely as another, but no one would do that because like I know how small businesses work. I ran few. You have to pay salaries. You hire people based on those criteria. You promise those people things. You help this team to grow specifically in the set of values, and then they changed, and you need to address it, and it's extremely hard. I only can wish everyone who is in this situation to find internal strength, like to be honest, basically. I mean, like, and to do things before it's too late. Transparency in general. I mean, like I think that the problem here is that it's again the distribution of capital and decision power. Everyone is so separated. I mean, like the program is validated and at large. You know, like in international organizations like WHO and UN and whatever, and people are talking about some very big global things without really thinking about the consequences of implementing this on everyone's lives. Or people are extremely liberal on if they're trying to solve some issue or someone who's super underrepresented, they think by default that they can do it by the account of other people with governments involved, you know, like, or by the money of their contracts, you know, like, or by the expense of the businesses they would involve into that. Very often businesses would not understand that the money they will get as grants to support these initiatives in the long term would be less than they would lose globally. Like it's a big problem of absence of long-term planning, you know, like, and discrepancy in the worldview of people on the different parts of this model, you know, like, and I think that transparency can really help with that. Now, it's too bloated from the point of view of number of actors and participants in global program, and that leads to the bureaucratic self-service. I mean, like, and what I mean by this, right, you know, like, is that here, I mean, like that's bloated, like this one, you know, like, is kind of all right, but the number of entities that can pop up in this sector, like number of entities in international proof of support and international, like, private sector support can grow exponentially. If something gets very popular, you know, like, number of entities of influence of because this business is strictly, you know, like, about support of such programs and servicing rich people ideas, like, and consultancies and PR agencies, you know, like, and, you know, all variety of wise men, you know, like, and women, whatever, you know, like it's all about that. I mean, like, the media of in lots of senses, we're not even starting conversation that journalism is long dead. It was never alive, you know, just people tell things other people tell. I mean, like, but the amount of media which are currently working on some big concept services, you know, like, is way too high. And the reason for it is that media in general, you know, like, is kind of dead because of the internet, you know, like, so that's like some of the very few income sources that they have, you know, like, but yeah, whatever, you know, like, but it's still an issue. It's too bloated, you know, like, and you need to make this programs more lean again to make it more transparent. To asymmetric from both information management and knowledge access of something we touched, you know, like, of people not understanding each other at different parts of this model. Too many expertises involved, and too many expertises are just falling down the cracks. Also related to transparency. Presumes systemic and template-based approach for all programs and businesses that quickly breaks against various contexts of products, services, and tech and businesses. Look, I get it. You know, like, no one can know everything equally. While this is something which is relevant in the corporations, you know, people pretend they do, which I think is stupid and horrible, and looks fucking awkward. You know, like, and people make themselves ridiculous. And we need to stop doing that. We also need to get away from global definitions, like, you know, like, and at the top of the pyramid, it works in a way where big money are like, oh, we're rich, and everyone, oh, it's because they're rich, they're probably very smart, and not necessarily. And then people are like, oh, academia, because they have Nobel and because they do science, they're probably smartest people in the world in everything. Not necessarily. I mean, like, smart only in subjects which are specifically subject. And people are like, oh, government, like, government is probably good at governing, you know, like, well, maybe nationally, not necessarily internationally, not equally, symmetrically, even nationally, you know, like, some governments are good at some things and some are in others. Some governments are fucking dictatorships, you know, like, you cannot generalize things that much. And then, oh, like it goes for everything, right? You know, like, it goes for every part of it, and especially for this part, like, in money management and business in general, because, like, international MBA schools are still telling you that if you can run one business, you can run any. It's the fucking biggest lie in the world. I mean, like, and they will still keep to that, and they would still say that at the times of crisis, you need to use the same tools you use in retail sales and retail commerce, like they're in a high-tech, high-talent business, which is like, where are you from, dude? Like it's just ridiculous at this point, but because no one wants to break the business, no one wants to start talking about this first. I mean, like it continued becoming issues, and that's the source of a lot of the problems, like what we're seeing here. And for massive asymmetry in worldview, super wealthy class and people who are servicing in echo chambering and have no real access to feedback from general business and population. Now, look, I mean, like if there would be tools to have a reasonable conversation, like where someone here, like in this part, have an opportunity to, let's say, quarterly, like talk with people from here. I mean, like, and historically it's been happening. I mean, like there's been models, or at least some of the ideas of these models, for example, in the post-medieval in Europe, like where there's been representatives of masters of professions, like who would talk to the majorate, like, and who would say that basically, look, like it's just not unions, but people who represent some specific expertise in some specific trade, like, and if they would be able, like to talk like somewhere here, like, and say, and if we would have representatives who would not be driven by the self-interest and who don't understand the context, like, and who would basically say that, yeah, this is all great, but that shit wouldn't work because of this and that, or at least you're risking those and those factors against these benefits that you're representing, like we would have much more of a sensible conversation over here. But because it's not happening, it's because like it's isolated, like moreover, it's a system that goes in a way where, and we'll talk about it in a minute, where every element, like wants to be one element up and relies on everything to be done by one element down without involving themselves too much into that. Like you really have like a very lazy ass and yet very ambitious in a mediocre level system, like, and that's the problem. And this is where we did discuss it in detail, like why exactly this issues happen, right? It's like, in system like transparency, too much reports oriented, which in its turn leads to too much interpretation possibility internally. It's highly abused. If you build something which is built in a way where, just like I just told you, like you have this model where people who do something report to you and they cannot report over you. You will interpret this data one way or another. You have so much chances not to be direct and transparent about that, and to change perspective a little bit, maybe just waiting for when your boss is in a good mood before telling you this news. That's manipulation as well. I mean, like, or maybe just saying that, well, that happened because of not that what you think of, or maybe kind of because of that, but not necessarily completely because of that, but because of that as well. Or you would say that we actually didn't make that much money, but this is how much attention and impact we have produced, right? And that goes again, like into the system that need to represent practical value and actual ethics and moral value as well at the same time. Like, there's so much interpretation possibilities over there, and these interpretations would be done in a lot of senses out of self-interest. I mean, like, and this is what happening in a lot of, actually, like all of the, I would say, almost all of the value-based global program and factor businesses, like adopted. I mean, like, so, and that has to be addressed and changed as well. System is too much internalized, upwards oriented. This is what we just talked about. Each upward segment relies on the segment down. This is I went ahead and talked about this as well. Now, too much specialization in middle segment, which is bloated, leads to absence of an understanding of full picture and high-level knowledge, which leads to massive insecurity among the sectors. Now, I mean, like, here's a problem with bloat. A lot of people like not taking into account as well. Like when you specialize business, like this way, like where you have like individual agents lower level, and you have like people like the profile the forums, and you have media separately, and you have internal competition. and each new specialization comes down with some specific function. If this is a multi-subject, if this is a multi-subject of layer system like DIY, for example, you also would have people specialized in specifically of race and gender and sexuality, and then people specialized internally in between the subjects in gay and lesbian and trans and queer and whatever, and in races correspondingly, and in gender, like you would have people who would over specialize in the feminism of the first wave and the second wave and the third wave and the suffragettes, and men would be conservative value. It becomes very, very, very over specialized to specific elements, and because it worked this way, and because it becomes so bloated and burdened, people try to secure and hedge their places by building this unique speciality in a way that they are protected. They have no competition, they have no alternative opinion, and they're trying to figure out their way of how they will communicate with other representatives of those subjects, while understanding that you're a big part of one program, and you need to kind of globally high level protect it. But the more specialization like this happens, the more you need to take into account, and the more into conflicted scenarios you will get. It's like, because like every subject is concerned with a bunch of other things, and you can see it right now going on in DIY, like where like gay people like automatically support everything said about like trans people, like and vice versa, and it's supposed to be like LGBT letters plus Q community, whatever, like, and they kind of like have to support each other on the subject, but because it's so much fractured and because subjects are so various, it's not the case anymore. Because like there would be things where like some of the trans people justifiably would basically say that, look, like we have a conflicting opinion about participation in sports, and gay people would be following the older narrative, like, and they would be actually supported, and trans people we're not, like at least the half of them would say that, like, and then there is this issue related to the prisons, right? I mean, like, and opinion of a part of the community, like what the prisons is the one opinion, and the other part of the community is another opinion, and people in media, they like really frustrated about it. They don't know whom to support, people who support whom they support, who specialize and have like authority to say those things, and it becomes the shit show because no one can really settle on any subject with each other, and at the same time, like all of those people, they would be still again, like run by the interest of following their agenda, being a part of those communities that they're chosen to be, and get benefits associated with being a part of this community. I mean, like, and that's like, it leads to too much fracture. I mean, like, and again, like bloat and over specialization driven by bloat make things dysfunctional almost in every scenario. And you need to simplify things, you need to flatten things, to step away from, while at the same time, as we discussed, like while being provided with initial nuanced expertise, you then need to boil this down to something which is simple and understandable. To ensure that even optional elements are qualified as mandatory, the chain and this chain of narrowing maneuverability in operations. What I mean by here is that think about the world where all of these things would be provided to you as optional opportunity. Like where one day you wake up and you read, like, I don't know, so you're looking at the news and you're like, UN together with the representatives of the capital and the prolific and most prominent representatives of this specific business make this program, you can participate. But not mandatory. It's important that you preserve your opinion about any of the subjects. But if you want to support the idea of DIY, of diversity and inclusion into the world, we would embrace your participants, and really appreciate your help. And this is what we're building together. If you are not, we don't care. We respect your choice and your opinion about every subject matter, and maybe discussing some of the particular initiatives under our program we will understand as good human beings, like that your opinion, our opinion coincide in this specific subject. Yes, we're not insisting for you to like those things, In fact, we understand that we need to provide a lot of work to earn trust of everyone, to see practical results of our initiatives, and to convince you guys to be a part of that. I mean, like, we also will work very hard to, and this is commercial associated, and obviously with influence-friendly businesses that are a part of these initiatives. We will work very hard to provide high quality products with as affordable price as possible, like for people to appreciate us, adding up to the variety of choice in the free market. How cool that would be. Unfortunately, because like chain is built the way it's built, and because media is formulated the way it's formulated, and because there's always this polarizing subject, and because how the world works, I mean, like, and everyone wants to create a lot of hype for the reporting purposes. Like, you will see the shit accumulating and going on, like in the most scandalous manner as possible. Now, for another issue, like, is people would hide under flops. And again, imagine the world where people are not afraid to say that they were wrong around the corners. I mean, like, not being afraid to be persecuted bigly by the partners if you said something wrong because of the California law, bitch. Like, and or just in general, like, find themselves into the industry where they would understand, and industries that them going up, like, and having enough internal will and personal decency would say that, look, this is what we did for the last stage, this is what worked, this is what didn't, we hear you, we understand, like, this is what we're looking to implement, to change it, and to adjust the process. I mean, like, and for thank you all of you for the feedback, like, and inform people better and earlier again, like how cool that would be from the point of view of accountability. Because currently, everyone understands that you can't apologize online or publicly, never, because like that would be a sign to completely devastate your careers. People would just not understand it. Like, and that's very, very wrong. Because like being able to stand there and say that this is what worked and this is what didn't, and this is our responsibility, is extremely important. I mean, like, because like if you do not recognize mistakes, you cannot fix them. I mean, like, but again, that goes with a different mood and the vibe of this whole thing. People need to be more self-actualized. People need not to depend completely from money, like, and that their livelihood, like, should not be completely dependent from their fervent and 100% in support of some ideology, like, and then it potentially can work. So things should not be mandatory. Things should be more optional. People should be more tolerant for the various opinions. And a big way to fix it as well is to inform earlier. I mean, like, and talk around the whole of the model. I mean, like, if you would think about literally every diversity irritating piece in games and culturally, like, it's all connected to the pipeline of entertainment products as well, how marketing cooperate, and just in general, that people are mostly coverage in the industry, like, and the way they build for the announces and the way they develop the product. Everyone tries to do that in a way so audience would have zero impact, like, on some of the key decisions. And then you're just basically told, you're just informed. You as an audience, you're told that this is what we have. We really hope you like it. If you don't, fuck you, like, because you're against good things. I mean, like, and it's not even a conversation. Like, why not to, like, have polls, like the Arrowhead guy, like the Arrowhead as a studio, like, after the situation with Sony, which is not depleted, unfortunately, like, but having polls about introduction of major orders, like being sold for money, talking to people about it. This is a good example. It should be more of that, like, and like the big global programs can be subject to it as well. I mean, like, you need more forum, you need people more involved into this conversation. Things would be infinitely better. No one should be shunned for choosing or not choosing to participate in these things. Should not be mandatory. And again, they're mostly mandatory because of reporting, and because, like, a lot of people, like, literally a lot of these conversations are you fucking use it or I'm not getting paid. And this is a bad conversation, like in general. I mean, like, yeah, it gotta be fixed. But talking about what can we fix, about it is eliminating the bloat, provide better transparency and planning programs with actual feedback of the entities and people that will impart the model for direct users and performers of these programs. Got to have business more vocal from the point of view of business. Got to need customers be more vocal from the point of view of consumers. Not being represented by professional lobbyists. Like we need for people to talk for groups of people, considering interest and the real, actual, pragmatic interests of those people and businesses. And those people need to put it straight and right. And if people and representatives from all of those groups would have an opportunity for such conversation, I think that things will start to fix themselves quite quickly. And customers need to talk as well. Businesses need to talk to customers to represent interest of the customers, and businesses need to assume the position where we build a product for those customers, we represent the interest of customers in some way. We cannot compromise it because otherwise we will go away from business. And that would be a good platform and position in general. And I think that if businesses and customers will work together more, they will have a much stronger position for money. I think that businesses working too much in this regards to customers with for all of the other elements of the system is again a big part of an issue. For making programs more flexible, with most of the modules being optional and presenting an opportunity rather than the stick, for more blackmail or otherwise. And this is what we already talked about a little bit. For training for communications should happen between all representatives of the different model elements transparently, and aim to find better ways for the program to function. It means that different type of training, education, and preparing people for these things are super critical, at this point. And I think that those processes need to be very open in general. And I think that people who work into the representation, who start to get into conversation earlier, they need to be presented by people who trained very well as well, because it's a separate job. And think about it in a way where before the program starts, you have a number of people who very well trained and versatile and stitching logics and rationalization, and they talk from the equal positions before anything starts. I think that it has much more potential. For more available, centralized and open public reporting with program-related funds allocation goals and performance expectations. Now I get it, we get some of this from the public market, if things are public, but the programs are not, and I think, that if we are informed that this specific media and PR agencies are taking that amount of grants and money, and these businesses are taking this amount of grants and money from this specific agenda, as a customer, who will be buying or not buying products related to the results of this program work, I would want to know about it. Because this activity influences the output and the quality, and influences the priorities of the organization that uses this priority to distribute funds and efforts to produce this product. Obviously as a customer, I'm somewhat interested, and I don't really understand why it should be an open data. And clear and definite separation of the program's impacts on declared goals and wider social context. It's very simple. If you are building a program and you want to solve some commercial related issues or achieve some commercial goals, that's one thing. If you want to do something in the field of social justice, it's another thing. If these things are connected, let's presume that program attacks a couple of these things simultaneously. But we need to understand that what's demanded and asked from the commercial entities will only be a part of much larger social context. And they're not equal, and they should not be equalized. It's two very different conversations. And by separating these two things internally and as we talk, like, is something extremely important. And I think that would be very, very helpful, like to make things to set work right. So, on that, thank you very much. I really hope that this was somewhat useful. Like lots of my materials, this one presumes that I would say a number of things which would make you think, rather than say that, yeah, that's what it is, like, because I still operate in my unique context, my unique experience. And I operate based on this specific subject of what I've been doing for my career, and from being told by different people and participating in some of those programs as well. I mean, like, and it may be a bit different for you guys, but knowledge is power. Methodologies are important. I think that having a conversation where we identify a whole number of issues, and they are a number of issues, like, not just, like, good things, and we say only good things, don't say bad things, like, and recognize it's more complex, is important. I also strongly believe into constructive conversation in general, and I think that talking from the point of view of a model, how topics develop, what they consist of, how they're connected together, identifying an issue and providing constructive criticism and a potential solution is also important in everything that we do. Cheers.